For those who don't know, I'm so pleased to have with us Deborah Mannis-Gardner, the queen of sample clearance, according to Forbes, Billboard, Music Week, OK Player, Midem, and more. She is the go-to expert for global music rights clearances. She started DMG clearances in 1996, and her sample clearance skills became legendary. She cleared for artists including Drake, Tyler the Creator, DJ Khaled, Eminem, Nicki Minaj, Kendrick Lamar, Lil Wayne, Frank Ocean, Jay-Z, John Legend, Lady Gaga, Rihanna, Beyonce, and more. She handled music clearances for films by Martin Scorsese, the Coen brothers, Richard Linklater, ad campaign clearances for Google, Ciroc, Kmart, podcast, music clearances, Broken Record, the actual Stretch and Bobbito show, video game clearances for Rockstar Games, franchises Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, and grand rights clearance for Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway sensation Hamilton. Oh, I'd definitely love to hear about that. She also served as the award-winning music supervisor of HBO's Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine docuseries The Defiant Ones, and is currently music supervisor for the upcoming Neil Bogart and Casablanca Records biopic Spinning Gold. Wow. She has spoken at South by Southwest, Needham, Music Biz, the A3C Festival and Conference, CMJ, the Nashville Film Festival, Sync Summit Nashville, as well as NYU, Temple University, and Widener College. Wow, that is awesome. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hey, that is so awesome. So, you've been in this game for a minute,
Yep.
and yes, and you have found such, I feel like you found such a dope niche in what you do and working with samples. What How did you get in that space? Like, what brought you into that sample clearance space?
I was really young. I started in 1990. So I was 25 years old. I was major punk rock, lived in New York City, the whole look. And I found a connection with hip hop and rap. I found as though it was very much like the punk rock movement. It was very rebellious. It was kind of like, fuck the man. And that was punk rock. That's what we
Yeah.
were all about.
Yes.
So no one was really clearing samples, and so there weren't any rules. So we were told it was theft. We were told this music wasn't going to be around. It was a phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually believed in it. I thought it was like, I think it's an art. I still think it's an art. What's exciting is back in the early 90s, the way you did it was very different than how you do it now. So that anyone at any age can go into their bedroom, hop on their computer, and create music and sample beats or whatever they want to sample. And so I kind of fell into this, and most of the people that were doing it kind of like went off into doing other stuff, didn't think it was going to be around, didn't like it. I kind of like being behind the scenes. I don't look to be in the spotlight, so I think that's also been a successful move for me, because I never step on anyone's attention. I'm just there to make things happen.
Mm-hmm. So when you said you got into hip hop, right? So were you like in hip hop as a fan? Like you were going to the shows, meeting the artists, and like, because I know you didn't probably start just saying, "Hey, Biggie, let me clear your sample."
But with Biggie, I had his demo tape.
Wow, tell me about that real quick.
Well, I mean, no, it was nothing. I mean, it was just a demo of his, that has since, of course, been destroyed or thrown out, with stuff that I had, But for me, I had roommates from England, and actually they were the ones, because the British were always obsessed with American music.
Mm-hmm.
They were obsessed with Elvis Presley still in the 90s. So I had, I lived in a loft, and there was like, five of us living in this loft, and there was a bunch of guys over from London, and they're the ones who actually turned me on to hip hop. They were so obsessed with New York and hip hop, and I'm like, this shit is great. And they would drag me to shows. Now, I was really young. I was in my 20s, and I was drinking and partying. So if you ask me the names shows, I mean, I can remember some of them,
Right, right,
like
yeah.
EPMP and stuff like that. But it was just, they turned me onto this music. I'm like, this is hot. This kind of like, emotionally get you, which is what music should always do if you are enjoying something. And that was the whole thing. It was they were saying something, they were having fun, or they were saying stuff. It was very different. I have that 50-pound book, the Bible of hip hop. And that, because really this stuff goes before where I started. I started in the 90s,
Oh
but
yeah.
this stuff started in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
With Curtis Blow and what was going on in New York. And of course, I always tell my California people, this is where it started. We started it in New York.
That's the truth.
You forget.
That's the truth. So, what was your first like actual position in the business? So you were loving hip hop. Then what made you get into the business?
So I was working for a company called Diamond Time, and they were a UK-based company that came to the US, and that was supposed to be doing synchronization clearances. And I came to them and I said, well, why can't we be doing sample clearances? And they said, well, try it. So I was the one that kind of brought it to them, like, let's do this. And my clients were like Shinehead and Leo Cohen when he was like chomping on his cigars working at Island Records, Dante Ross when he was A&R at Elektra. I was working with Eric and Parrish, who I am still friends with and still keep in touch with from EPMD. So I still work with Tommy Silverman from Tommy Boy Records. So these were the people that were doing stuff, and we were just trying to figure it out ourselves, how to make these deals and how to do it.
Wow. So back then, how would you do it? Like you said it's different than now, right? Because it was just I mean, I can imagine how difficult it was back then, especially dealing with a music that wasn't respected. Like how were you able to
So if you can imagine, we used to make audio cassette tapes, print out a letter saying, our client has used the song and we'd like permission. And then any of the labels and publishers in New York, we used bicycle messengers. And anything that was in California, we used an overnight service called Sureway at the time. And, the immediate response was, well, why did you use it without getting permission first? This is theft.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is kind of funny because now when we go to clear something saying, hey, we're thinking of using such and such, can we do it? And like, well, we need to hear it first. You need to use the sample. So
Interesting.
really
Right.
different. So it was, and we'd call, you didn't have huge internet use. You'd have to call ASCAP. You'd have to call BMI. You'd have to find the writers, find the publishers. A lot of phone calls and doing research to find who the copyright holders were. Then you'd send it to them. And then it was always evolving as to how the deals were going to get done, if they were going to give permission. There's no language in the artist contracts or the publishing contracts. So there weren't any rules on how to go about doing it. So we all just kind of created the rules together.
Wow. So just to kind of break it down into its more, so they understand exactly what you're clearing. So like when you clear a sample, like in a song, what are you clearing? What are you getting permission for?
We're securing the rights of the composition, which is the music and or lyrics that's been written and created by the writers of the song. And you're not going to the writers for consent. You are going to the publishers. Every writer has a publisher. Even if they're self-published, they're still a publishing entity. And then on the master side, you're going to the record label. You're not going to the artist. You're not going to the artist manager. You're going to the record label because they own the rights to the recordings and then they account to the artist. I think that's one of the mistakes that people make is, well, I know, Megan Thee Stallion, I can just clear it with her direct. It's like, no, you need to go to 300. You need to go to the right people.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And that's what I'm always telling y'all. And when I'm saying y'all, I'm talking to the students that are watching. The 2 copyrights in a song. When she said she has to clear both of them whenever she clears a sample, the composition and she has to clear the master. Those are, I stress that to y'all every time. So this is it. And this is showing you the true example of that process. So, what do you need now? Like, so say I have a song and I want to clear the sample. What would I need to get that cleared? Like, how would I go about that process?
Well, I mean, if you're hiring DMG, we actually we have a sample form, which is on our website to kind of help people be organized because it's relevant, not just the title of the song and the artist. Sometimes, we ask if you have the album title because a recording artist might have recorded that same song on multiple albums for multiple labels, so that's pretty important. And
Mm.
then the description of the sample, if it's a, and is it replayed or resung, or are you using the original recording? So we do ask, is it an interpolation, or did you lift the master recording? And then we usually ask what was used. We can listen to it, but if you want us to work fast and help identify quickly and have the receiving end respond quickly, people usually say, well, I used the bass line, it's 2 bars, it came from the intro of the song, and it's looped throughout the new song. This is relevant information because it makes a determination as what kind of quote it should be. If it was a bass line that was used only in the intro of the song, it would have a different value than if it was a bass line looped throughout.
Mm.
All the information that you give to me gives me the ability, gives me the tools to do the best deal possible for my clients.
Okay. So I have to ask you this question because I've been here as an artist, right? Doing independent artist, doing songs. I'm not making a whole lot of money. My producer sampled on my song. I feel like I'm not gonna make much money on this song, I don't necessarily need to clear the sample. They're not going to care about me unless I'm making a lot of money. Have you heard that argument, and what is your response to that?
Sure, I've heard that argument, or I've heard the argument, I'm not selling it, I'm putting it out there for free. I don't have any money. Well, the thing is, that artist and that writer deserves to be financially compensated for their material. Nothing is free. And so there's a reason that sample was used, because it elevates your song. If it wasn't important, then pull the sample out.
Mm.
And since you did take the sample and you incorporate it in your song, you need to compensate people for that use.
Mm.
And, this is my whole platform in telling people nothing should be free. Don't give away your music for free, and don't expect people to give music to you for free.
Mm.
Because if you live on that basis, then how are you going to pay your bills? You can't pay your electric bill without any money. And you can't do, an exchange for electricity or for rent.
Yeah, I can tell you because it really, one of my most popular songs independently, it was like a glass ceiling over me because I was like, I can't do much with it because it's a sample in it. So I feel like it is important in that way as well to make sure
As
that
long
you
as you
clear.
clear the sample, you can exploit it, as much as possible. When you're clearing a sample, you're not given all the rights. You're usually just given audio configurations and music video rights. But it establishes a percentage. So if you sampled Love Hangover, or let's say you replayed the bass line of Love Hangover, and it's Sony ATV on behalf of Joe Bat, let's say they took 50% of the copyright. And now you have the opportunity for it to be used in a new film project. And they've offered you $20,000. You'll get half of that money, and then the clearance company will also go to Sony ATV, and they'll get half the money. So never think of a sample as something holding you back to earn revenue, as long as you clear it.
Mm-hmm. So when you clear, like, so I just kind of want to talk generally um, about when I clear, say I want to clear that sample, right? What would the fee usually be? So maybe your fee, and then how much would on the publisher side they generally take, and then on the master side?
So my fees are actually listed on my website. I'm that transparent. So if you
Okay.
go to www.dmgclearances.com, my fees are listed right there on my website. And I charge a flat fee so that you always know what they are before you even start. With regards to the sample, the publishers usually ask for a non-recoupable fee, and they don't prorate it like they used to in the old days. So if you've got 5 publishers on one song, they all might be asking for that $2,500 fee, or if there's 5 publishers, we try to maybe get it down to $1,500. And then they'll ask for a piece of the new copyright. That value gets prorated. Let's go back to the whole Love Hangover idea. If it's the bass line it's used throughout, Sony ATV might quote 50% ownership full stat, which means they would get 50% and then the new writers get 50%. Their publishing gets 50% and then your publishing entities get 50%. If you were to sample another song where there are multiple writers, multiple publishers, so let's say it's a Sony ATV and Warner Chappell, both publishers might ask for a $2,500 advance, but that 50% then gets split between the two of them.
Okay.
So they use the word prorated. On the master side, that fee can range from $1,500 to $20,000 depending on who you've sampled and how extensive the use is. And then they'll ask for a percentage of PPD, which is like it's a percentage of the selling price. And then they're also going to ask for a percentage for third party, like for streaming and ringtones, or they establish a percentage if it's used in a film. They know what percentage they're going to get of that third party fee.
Mm.
These percentages, again, can range from 1% to 12% for the PPD. And for third party licensing, it can range from 3% to 50%.
Okay. So does it matter, like, say if I'm an independent artist versus a major artist, would they lower their fee a little bit in that case, or they don't even care who's using it? It doesn't matter.
No, but it's our job as the clearance company to try to get that fee down as much as possible. I mean, when people hit me up, I warn them right up front what their estimated fees would be.
Okay. So you would know in advance.
Yeah.
What would you say as far as how long the process can take, and how far in advance should I really start going out and clearing my songs?
As soon as you sample it, you should start clearing it. Clearances can take from 1 hour to 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. There's no set time limit. I mean, it's all over the place.
Oh, okay, okay. Um, a lot of people think, and I just want to talk to you about this. Oh, well, if I only, and I used to hear this a lot, if I only use, 10 seconds of it and chop it up so small you can't tell, then I should be fine. It should be some type of fair use here. What do you say to that?
Fair use does not apply to sampling. And even the film and documentary projects I work on, we don't touch fair use. We usually recommend that they hire an attorney that specializes in fair use.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times people are like, yeah, I took it, I chopped it up, you can't identify it, I flipped it, it's backwards. Okay, so there's usually two responses from me. One, why did you bother? Or two, why is it that you think you chopped it up, but I can identify it that easily?
Wow.
So, and there's no, urban legend, needle drops. Yeah, you have to clear a needle drop. Marshall clears needle drops all the time. Eminem clears them all the time. Drake clears them all the time.
Wow.
So you do need to.
Okay. Okay, there's another question. How often do people just say no?
It used to be about 1%. I'm going to say now it's up to like 5%.
So it's going up, the no's.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Really? I wonder why.
I think my no percentages have gone up because when I tell people it's going to get denied, they don't believe me. I'm like, I don't want to charge you $325 for you to get a no. They still tell me to do it, and then they get a no.
Mm.
So, but I have to count it as a no. Someone came to me and they wanted to use Hypnotize, and it was an interpolation. I said, well, I think the Big E state's going to deny it, and I think the sampled copyright holder, which is Randy Albert, who I actually became friends with after doing that deal, is going to deny it because your lyrical content is disgusting. And they still wanted me to try, and I got denied by both parties easily.
Wow. So you just brought up an important point about sampling a sample.
Well, we're at that generation now. I mean, don't forget, this has been going on since the 90s.
Right.
And we're in the year 2020. So, yeah, you've got samples of samples of samples of samples. And then you have to evaluate it. Like, I've got this great employee, Rachel Lefkowitz, who is really, keen on catching this stuff. Like, well, they gave me this song, but it's actually a drum beat that was sampled from another song. Which do I clear? I said, if it's only the drum beat and no other elements, let's say it was Naughty by Nature, but it was the drums that was sampled in the Naughty by Nature, only clear the drums.
Wow.
It's a continuous argument and discussion that we have, and an evaluation.
Wow. So, in your experience, are there like people that or certain artists or certain labels that this is not going to happen? They don't clear samples. They don't allow samples.
Yeah, we have a lot of those.
What are those artists? Can you give us a couple of those artists that?
I mean, Anita Baker does not like to be sampled. Tracy Chapman does not like to be sampled. Led Zeppelin does not like to be sampled.
Is Elton John one of those too?
He's cleared for a couple of people. He cleared for Marshall, so yeah, he's cleared.
Okay, he's cleared.
Journey does not like to be sampled.
Wow. So it's good to know that, because then you could just be like, wait, I'm not.
But people don't listen to me. They don't believe me.
He better. Shoot,
So, I
that's
mean, if they want to,
$30.
again, it's $325. If it's publishing a master, if you have $650 to throw away to pay me for me to get a denial, I'll do it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I noticed also in your bio you do a lot of sync clearance as well, and you're doing music supervisor work. And one question I get from a lot of my clients is, how can I get my music in movies? How can I get sync placements? Do you have any advice on that?
I do not envy those people who do that. It's really hard work. We do not do that at DMG. There are music libraries that we deal with. Um,
So when you say, can you explain real quick when you say music library?
they're music libraries. There are people that just have beats and stuff created. That's like you can then clear something for like $1,000 to fill in a spot instead of score. So instead of doing score, you go to a library. There's like, Extreme, which is now part of Universal, APM as a library. And then there are individuals that just represent different libraries. I always say, if you've got a publishing representative, they're the ones who are going to pitch your compositions. And if you have a record deal, the label's going to pitch your recordings. But to pitch it yourself, it's not an easy thing to do. There are people like Michelle Michelle Bayer rather, who used to work at Tommy Boy, has her own company, does a great job pitching, gets her stuff in TV shows and
Oh,
commercials.
Shelly Bay?
Yeah, Shelly Bay. She's
Yeah.
awesome. Friendly Fire, they pitch stuff. Michael Nieves' company, Sugaroo, they do amazing pitching.
Mm.
So there are people that do that all day long. I would never do
So they
it.
need
I
to
have never tried
find, right. So they essentially need to find someone that can help them pitch
it.
their
And
music.
then when you're music supervising, people think, oh, the music supervisor makes all the decisions. It doesn't. When I did the Defiant ones, I worked really closely with Alan Hughes, Dr. Dre, Jimmy Iovine. I mean, it was all a group effort. And my specialty is I like working on documentaries. So there really isn't room to pitch stuff in essence because it's usually music that relates to that topic.
Hmm.
The music is very specific. Or you're scoring your filler, and I work with a couple of guys that do that kind of stuff.
Right. So, I mean, you almost need to know what the people are looking for to create something kind of based on that mood, like not just generally providing music. So, okay. So now we have some questions that people submit in the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just answer, I want to answer a few of their questions.
Okay.
Someone asked, how does Splice work?
Okay, I actually do advice for Splice. And if you're licensing in it, I think it's subscription based, where you get a subscription and you're licensing beats to incorporate in your song, and it's royalty free. I have multiple conversations with them. They're really careful that the stuff that they get is sample free, and they've cleaned up stuff that wasn't sample free. If you're looking for stuff that's pre-existing for sampling, then there's Trackclub, which also I work with. And that is, they've pre-cleared these pre-existing copyrights. Their fees are right there on their website. They're subscription based now as well. But when you go to sample something from them, there's something out there in the woods. Once you sign the contract, your sample license is done. I'm sorry, there's like an animal out there, and I kind of like freaked out, like what is out there? But
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. So yeah, I remember when I saw you at A3C, they were in your
yeah, okay, so that was a couple years ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was that, well, dang, was it last year? I don't remember.
No, last year I spoke on my own there, and then 2 years ago I spoke
You
with
did your own, and they were just like, listening to you.
Yeah, they were in the front row listening. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so that's an interesting model that they've done.
Yeah.
With
they're still tweaking it. They're still trying to perfect it.
Yeah. Someone else asked, oh, and you mentioned royalty-free samples. How do the royalty-free samples work?
Right.
I know ASCAP asked if there's samples used. How does that work together?
Careful. Yeah, be careful with a lot of these libraries claim, you know, that they're clean beats that you can use that are royalty free, and a lot of times they're sampled material. So if you are signed to a major record company or you're pitching something to an artist signed to a major record company, Interscope, Def Jam, Republic, Island, they will reject the beat because these companies don't stand behind saying that they are cleared beats. So if you want a beat that you know is clear, you either go to Splice or you go to Trackclub. Those are the only two companies. Like King's Highway, you go to that, you buy it, you download it, but then you still have to clear it. That's because that's Frank Duke's company.
Wow. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I know because I know you know, Ill Mind, and I talked about him before. He has, you know, he has his like beat packs and sample packs and all that. And, you know, he's like, yeah, it's royalty free unless you know, you get a major placement, or unless you get, you know, this and that, make more than $1 million, and I want this. So that's part of an example of making sure and being clear on what you're doing. Um,
Right. So that's where you see if there's a possibility of getting your beats up at Tracklib or Splice. I don't know how that works. I'm not part of that side of it, but it's something that people should investigate, I guess.
yeah, for sure. Somebody asked, does an artist have to get a license to remake a song as long as the artist gives the entire publishing and writer share to the original composers?
Okay, but in essence, that's a cover. Um, there are, it's something I'm actually researching and investigating right now because it used to be you could do a cover and you could just upload the video onto YouTube and you wouldn't have to get a sync license. But this stuff is changing. I had a meeting with my staff either yesterday or the day before, and I'm being told that there are new YouTube contracts in place that forces you to definitely get a sync license on the publishing side, and the labels can put a claim in on master revenue because you're taking away master revenue from the artist that recorded the song. This is something I'm just hearing about. I
What?
am asking for clarity, and I'm actually generating emails to send out to all the major labels and publishers to get clarity, because I don't know if this is urban myth or if this is fact. So this is something that we're working on.
Right, because you know, you think it'd be tied to the compulsory.
You would think.
Yeah.
But I think if there's revenue being generated, I think they start questioning that.
Hmm.
I think they're starting to question the influencers. The influencers want 100% of the revenue, but if they're playing a video game on a certain platform and that song is heard in the background, then the labels and publishers want a portion of that revenue, and the influencer does not want to share it. So there's all this stuff going on that we're moving really fast technology-wise, and clearance side, we need to catch up and figure this stuff out. And
That's
that's
true.
one of the things I'm working on in my spare time.
Yeah, because you know, the with COVID and the whole DJs on Instagram Live and Facebook Live, I've had a lot of DJs contact me and say, "How do we figure out these rights? Because I want to play this music, and I keep getting shut down." And
I
I
haven't
con-
figured it out yet. I
yeah,
haven't figured it out.
I contacted Instagram, I contact Instagram, and she's like, well, you know, she told me her, like, I'm sure they told her to answer this way. We are not a music platform. So play, you know, 30-second previews of the music if that's what you want to do, but we're not a music platform. And they're taking a stance of they're not going to take the time to get clearance for everything. But I think it's a huge issue for a lot of DJs right now.
And they're all saying that. Snapchat says they're not a music platform. TikTok says they're not a music platform. They all are saying they're not music platforms, but music is on their platform. So
Right.
we need to come to the table and get this resolved.
And yeah. And so what do you think? Because that's what we're trying to work out, you know, what we can do to, you know, it's going to have to take some type of coalition, I'm thinking, of people to come together and,
I haven't figured it out. I tried to in the beginning of COVID. I was pretty aggressive, pissed off a lot of people, pulled back so I wasn't pissing people off as much. I'm waiting to see what we come up with.
okay, well, I'll like to talk to you about that. So another time. I like pissing people off. Anyway, um, what, oh, wow. We already answered that. Somebody asked about Tracklib in here. Um, Someone asked, what are the breakdowns, maybe an example of a song you cleared and how it worked out, um, and how it would work for a bedroom producer, and what about leasing production? How does sample clearance work for a lease?
I don't know. I've never seen it as a lease.
Yeah, so I guess that's interesting because, independent producers, they'll like lease, um, they'll allow artists to lease their beats, meaning giving them a non-exclusive right to use their
Yeah,
beat.
I tell people not to do that.
Yeah, I think that's sticky.
Yeah, I don't touch that. But, a good example, let's go back to Hypnotize, that samples Rise. The sample took 75% of the new copyright, which was Universal Music Publishing, and the remaining 25% was split between the new writers, um, of which I think 20% is Sony ATV and 5% is Universal, or maybe it's 21.64. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'm pretty close. And then on the master side, that was Herb Albert's label, so we had to clear the master rights. I don't remember what the fee is, not that I would necessarily share that dollar amount.
Right.
But so it's kind of like what we talked about earlier when I gave the Love Hangover example, where the publishers take a piece of the copyright, they ask for a fee up front, and the label asks for a percentage of the royalty that it receives and a recoupable advance.
Hmm. But um, they're all gonna get an upfront fee. There's never a time when that fee is waived.
Okay, so this fee only applies in the United States. Outside the United States, publishers don't ask for any kind of fee or advance.
Really?
Right. So sometimes people don't ask for a fee or an advance because maybe they're UK based or they have the same mentality as ex-US. But it's only the American publishers that ask for this.
Wow. So that's good to keep in mind if you want to sample like, works from other countries.
Right, as long as they don't have a US sub publisher. If they have a US sub publisher, you're still going to get hit with that fee.
Ah, real quick, can you explain what you mean when you say US sub publisher?
Okay, so publishing is territorial. So if I live in the United States and I'm a songwriter and I have a publishing company, they can only collect in the US for me. And then if something gets sold in Australia, I need a sub-publisher in Australia to collect that money. You can't cross country lines. So I'm partners with a person by the name of Deborah Evans. She's Della Music down in New Orleans. I gave her, we handle Eric Sermon's publishing, we handle Redman's publishing, we handle Hassizzle. So the first thing I did is I stuck her on a plane, sent her to Cannes to France, and hooked her up with sub-publishers so she had sub-publishing worldwide, so that anything that Reggie writes in the United States, she collects. Anything that then earns revenue, let's say in Uruguay, our sub-publisher collects it. They get a cut, and then they send the money on to us.
So you have a publishing imprint as well?
I did have one, and then I split partners with this person. The writers wanted to stay with me due to loyalty, Eric and Reggie. And so I just hooked up with another person. So I work with a lot of publishing companies. If someone doesn't have publishing, they've got a huge catalog, they're looking for someone, I will introduce them to either whoever's the best person, the best fit. Deb isn't handling too much stuff. She really limits. She's out of New Orleans, so she really loves handling the bounce and all the stuff out of New Orleans. I sometimes work with the Royalty Network. I work with Frank Lewell. I adore him. I think he's got an amazing boutique company.
Yeah.
So it varies.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Dang, someone else asked about Trackclub. All right. Well, we got that.
You go to www.tracklib.com. I think their website is pretty easy to follow and understand. Their fees are very low. It's really meant for bedroom producers. I mean, it does happen, because of my clients. So Cole used them, Mary J's used them, Khaled used them, Everlast, Fantagram, Brockhampton, Lil Wayne. My clients have used them. But it's meant for bedroom producers.
And this is just a general question. Are you familiar with Stone's Throw Records and Madlib?
Yes, I am.
They don't use you, do they? Do they?
I clean stuff up.
That's all we could say. Because I know that's one of the independent labels that will just kind of put stuff out and see what happens
Hmm.
later. For sure. Somebody asked again, we answered that. The company name, your company name, DMG clearances.
DMG clearances. My website's www.dmgclearances.com. I think if you stick my name in Google, it comes up. I think I'm
Oh,
Googleable.
you're definitely Googleable. Is that a word? Googleable.
I think all you do is type in Queen of Samples, and I think it comes up. So if you don't even know how to spell my name, I think Queen of Samples, it pops up.
Someone said, what about loops from LooperMan? I've never heard of LooperMan.
I don't know who LooperMan is. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of things out there on the internet. Just be really careful what you use. That's all
Yeah.
I can recommend. Just be careful.
Yeah, you have to make sure you look at those terms and conditions on that site and read through them. And if you don't
Sure.
understand them, ask an attorney to help translate it. Because when you click and accept, you don't know what it says. And there's,
Yeah. And that's why Universal doesn't really want their artists or producers using from a lot of these sites, because then when you reach out to the site, they backpedal.
mm. So it's, oh, it was sample, I mean, royalty
Or they
free.
say we can't make any warranties. It's more like on a quick claim. You just have to be careful on that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And that's very important.
Hmm.
Oh, this is a great question. Oh, my intern asked this question. What about clearing someone's voice from a speech? For example, 10 seconds of a Lauryn Hill interview. What is the
Okay,
difference?
so this is great for you. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Everyone owns the likeness of their voice. For example, if someone was to sample my voice from one of these podcasts or lectures that I do, you have to come to me for permission. If someone uses your voice, they have to come to you for permission. It's just like you own the likeness of your visual. Like if you ever see not commercial, if you ever see videos where people are like fuzzed out because they didn't have permission to use their likeness. So there's two parts of that, sometimes even three. So you use Lauryn Hill. She's done an interview. Luckily, you didn't use the person who was asking her questions, but the person who recorded it, the production company that produced the interview, they own the rights of that recording that you lifted. So you need
Mm,
to clear that as well. Um, and it's, we actually are raising our prices, which I just reached out to my website for anyone who's sampling from these YouTube clips. We just bumped our prices up because it is just so difficult, and there's so many layers of clearances
wow.
that like if the next part is like, well, what if you use a clip from a TV show or from a movie? So you have to get the likeness of the actor's voice. You have to get permission from the studio. The studio probably has a publishing deal, so they'll ask you to go through their publishing arm. They're going to ask for a piece of publishing. They're going to ask for artist royalty. They're going to ask for most favored nations and ask for the same fee that that artist is getting paid. So if you're using Al Pacino from Scarface from Universal, and Al Pacino wants $20,000, then Universal wants $20,000. Then they're also going to put in their quote letter that you need to go to the unions as well and get permission from the unions for reuse fees. Does anyone do it? No, but it will be in there stating that you are responsible for getting all unions secured. Your unions would be Directors Guild, Actors Guild, Writers Guild. The list goes on.
Oh my God.
Nightmare.
Wow. So that Lauryn Hill interview, do you have to get permission from Lauryn Hill too, though, right?
Get permission from Miss Hill, yeah.
So Miss Hill, the production company that put it on. And why did you say good thing you're not using the interviewer?
Well, because then it's another clearance and it's another fee. The more voices sometimes people like take a snippet from a movie and they got three different people speaking in that snippet. I'm like, you need to clear all three people, all three actors. I mean, we did that with Puff on some stuff that he did, where we had to clear all the different actors' voices that were used and pay each of them their fee, and then also pay the studio. And then they also made us pay a fee through the publishing company and asked for a piece of publishing.
Wow.
So when people come to you and say, we want to use a snippet from a film, we just say, do you have $20,000 to $40,000 put aside for that?
Wow. Probably not. Wow, that was a great question. Yes, I'm glad you asked that. And then someone just asked about sampling covers from YouTube, and you kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
Dang, sampling a cover?
Well, yeah, people sample. You know what? It's kind of funny because when they submit it to me, they don't submit it like I've sampled a cover of the song. They say I've sampled the song blank by so and so, but I'm using the re-recording done by another artist.
Hmm.
And you have to understand, because it's two separate things, it's irrelevant. If you've sampled someone else doing a cut like Jolene, okay, Jolene is a song written by Dolly Parton, Velvet Apple, which is now administered through Sony ATV. It was recorded by what is her name? Wrecking Ball Girl. Miley Cyrus.
Okay.
Okay, so you could clear Miley Cyrus's recording. You could clear Dolly Parton's recording. You could clear Jack White's recording. So when you say you're using a cover, lots of big people do covers of songs. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's important when someone says, well, I sampled Jolene. I'm going to say, well, which recording did you use?
Okay. And if they got it off YouTube, does
Well,
that make a difference?
if you click on that button, it says show more information. It usually says who the record label is.
Mm-hmm. So it really doesn't matter necessarily where you get it from, whether you take the recording from the album or from rip it off of YouTube, right?
It's going to be still the same thing, yeah.
It's still the same
So
thing.
if you've sampled Hypnotized from the vinyl or the CD, or you sampled it from the music video on YouTube, it's still the same label.
Okay. Someone asked, what are some sites a producer can look up who owns a song?
Well, if you've got the skills to research, good on you. And you usually go to, I usually go to ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, Harry Fox, but then I also have access. I have passwords to get into the Universal database, Sony ATV database, Warner Chappell database, the PRS database in the UK,
Oh, wow.
and the BMG database. So I have access to publishing companies' databases to look stuff up myself.
Wow. That's awesome. What are your thoughts on, I feel like that it's crazy that there still is no central database for looking up music. I mean, I still would have to go to ASCAP, go to
They're
B
all talking about it. They've been talking about it for years.
years.
You know what? I tried to create a database. I spent $15,000. And then I'm like, this is a waste of money because you're dealing with an artist that, okay, who was it we were looking at? Okay, DJ Khaled. DJ Khaled's initial publishing deal was with Notting Hill, which was through BMG. Notting Hill ended their deal with BMG and is now through Cobalt. Harrison Lewis used to always be either Universal or Sony ATV. Their stuff has now been bought by Cobalt, with small portions being still with Sony ATV and Universal. The crazy thing is, I just happen to remember this stuff because I'm an idiot. But so if you create this database, I mean, when people lose rights of things, it's not even an ASCAP and BMI fast enough. Wu-Tang Clan's publishing has been with Universal Music since inception, but in 2020 their deal ended. It's with Downtown. I go to Downtown and they still haven't finished going through the contracts to even confirm what they can license. And if you go on to BMI and ASCAP, it still says Universal.
Wow.
So how are you going to create a singular database?
Wow.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And this stuff is just stuck up in my head.
You are the database.
I am the data. I know. If we could put a USB drive into my brain, I'd be really rich.
Right. That's amazing. Let me see. I'm gonna have like one or two more. We've already done that. Okay. Oh, so the other questions are mostly about, let me see if I had anything on Instagram, but mostly about Trackclub. A lot of people know about Trackclub. We keep asking.
Trackclub is a really great site because you're paying like $25 or $50 for a sample instead of $2,500 to $10,000. There's no hidden fees. There's no hidden agenda. It was created by a bunch of Swedish guys, one being from a very popular Swedish pop band, and then his partner, that was Eric, and his partner Per is a musician. He was a jazz musician, but he actually was like a computer geek, and he was actually involved in creating, um, getting electricity to sites in rural India that didn't have electricity. And then he went over into the music industry, and he's been working on this for 7 years. So he's
Wow.
really, really interesting guy.
Wow.
And so he created it specifically so people could sample without a DMG. And then they came to me in October of 2017 and asked me to come on board to give them guidance and help. And I was like, sure. Someone kind of made a mention that the fees went up on Track, but they did go up because they have a subscription now, and they are offering, like, I think, like, there's a slight increase because they were trying to get more stuff in the site, and they needed to bring those fees up a little bit, but they're still really low compared to doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Someone just said Elon is working on it.
Yeah, I saw that. I think that was the putting a
The database.
getting that out of my brain. Putting a USB drive up to my brain. Someone was making a joke that Elon.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm taking it serious. Sorry.
I think that was a joke.
Squiz, is that a joke? Okay. One more question. Someone is asking, we kind of talked about it, but I'll just go ahead and answer their question. Do you have to get a drum loop or a drum break cleared? I make Baltimore club music, and it's built off certain drum breaks, but they're not sure about like the breaks and how,
You know what? It's usually, if it's recognizable, like Impeach the President or James Brown, people that created very specific drum beats. I'm working on an A-list rock album for someone on Island. They used some drum beats that were actually clearing because they felt as though that's the right thing to do. The thing about drum beats is, if you can't create it yourself, again, Splice and Trackclub are the places really to go for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Someone's asking my classical music. I can't read the whole question.
Yeah. Oh, you can't see it?
I guess I probably need to click. Oh, there we go. I have to click on the right. My bad. Okay. Classical music. How does that work? Do you still have to clear it? Classical music, as long as it's public domain, you don't have to clear the actual composition. I remember Coolio was using classical music for a while. And Will Smith on Will from Home, his TV show that we just did on Snapchat, we use classical music. If you're using classical music that's been recorded by an orchestra, you need to clear the master rights. And it's difficult. There's a company called Naxos, if you really are into using classical, and they are really accommodating. And actually, I think they dumped all the classical stuff into Trackclub to make it easier for people.
Oh, wow. And so real quick, let's backtrack when you mentioned public domain. Can we just break that down a little bit?
Well, you need to be careful with the word public domain, because something that's public domain in the United States does not mean it's public domain ex-US. A great example is the song Hello My Baby. That song is public domain in the United States, but Warner Chappell controls the rights of the song ex-US worldwide. So when we did the game Red Dead Redemption, which is mostly public domain material, we made sure that all of the stuff was written prior to a certain time period in the 1800s. But just be careful.
So when we say public domain, we mean that the copyright is no longer valid.
Anyone. Mm-hmm.
It's expired, so it's free for anyone to use. But like Deborah said, it's very important. It could be written in the 1800s, but it was just recorded by the Boston Symphony, in 1996, right?
Right. So someone's posted a link. Yeah, and this is brand new, that the Library of Congress put together a whole bunch of stuff that fell into the public domain. I haven't, I was actually talking to Wendy Day about it, and she's like, is there anything good to even sample from there? And I don't know. So, but I always tell producers, be talented, come up with stuff. I always tell people, go into Trackclub and practice. See, pick up some polka. What can you do with this stuff? If you're a good producer, you should be able to pull out some notes and chop it up and create something with it. You're more than welcome to give out my email address. I do respond to every email.
Right.
If you ask me 101 questions, I'm going to stop at 3, but if you ask me like, 1 or 2 or 3 emails, I will respond for free.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Deborah. I appreciate your time. I'm glad I got in on your last